I think the masterstroke of Duolingo is in its exploitation of basic human psychology. I think they're very clever at this. The founders most likely asked a profound question. Will a human being willingly fool themselves into believing they're learning just to feel accomplished? And the answer was a resounding yes. Human beings would absolutely do that. So what's wrong with Duolingo, you might wonder? Let's talk about this, and this isn't to criticize, this is rather more to inform. So a word about myself before we start. I've been on the front lines of language education since 2016. I've been tutoring private clients, working within traditional language schools, engineering multiple curricula single-handedly until I developed the method I use today with wecommunicate.com. When I think of Duolingo, if you just strip away the billions of corporate dollars and hundreds of millions of users, well, you find a very simple problem. You find a foundational, structural problem with Duolingo that's really very simple and that no amount of money can ever solve. The primary issue with Duolingo, the main issue, is at the very top, at the very foundation of the business, is that none of its founders come from teaching or a linguistic background. So thinking like a linguist requires a very specific and rigorous academic frame of mind. Just as an outsider can't think like an architect or like a doctor, the creators of Duolingo can't think like educators. They think as software designers, as marketers, and behavioral psychologists. When tech outsiders from the tech industry, attempt to build a learning product, and this is true for all learning products that are built by tech people, which is the majority, they're trapped in a dilemma, okay? So they either force the language into a pre-existing vision, so they have an aesthetic vision, they have a functional vision, and so they force the language into this vision, and in this case, they invent a digital game, so the equivalent of a little cowboy that shoots at a vocabulary cactus, a little cowboy who shoots at a vocabulary cactus. And then they hire language teachers to retroactively force the language's complex structure into that rigid, simplistic template. Or option B, they rely on fractured design committees. So because the founders lack the expertise to identify what truly makes an excellent language teacher, they hire massive teams to build exercises. These teachers inevitably bring conflicting methodologies, resulting in a watered-down, diluted compromise. Each teacher has their own view on language teaching and their own experience, so they have to reach a compromise. And every time a new feature is added to these big language apps, it's true for Duolingo, but for all the others, a new consensus must be forced onto an old consensus. But the fun doesn't stop there. Because Duolingo is a massive corporate machine with its shareholders and committees, it can't easily pivot. A business of one, like myself, can fix a pedagogical error instantly. I don't have to consult anyone if I want to correct something or add something. A corporate dinosaur must vote on everything, meaning that they remain permanently stuck with bad educational ideas embedded deep within their software. The second point I want to address I call the illusion of one-size-fits-all syntax. Every language on earth possesses its own internal logic. It's very important. It has its own structural priorities. Every language has its own structural priorities and unique architectural challenges. For example, the syntactic priorities of French are completely different from the mechanics of English. In simple words, each language has its own priorities. You don't teach one like you teach the other. Duolingo completely ignores this reality, so they use a singular homogenized logic and aesthetic framework for every single language on the planet. Whether you're learning French, Japanese or Arabic, the core mechanism remains identical. on Duolingo, and it's still the same little cowboy who shoots at a digital cactus, that the foundations are built on mud, quite literally, that no true educator would ever accept. The third thing that's wrong with Duolingo I call erasing the pain points of learning. Before the internet boom of the 2000s, language learning sat solidly in the hands of qualified professionals. You had to go to your local language school. Professionals still owned the profession. You had publishing houses, reputable publishing houses, and rigorous audio programs if you wanted to learn a language. You didn't have that many options, and it required, if you wanted to learn a language, it required dedication, focus, and a certain tolerance for cognitive friction. Duolingo likely analysed the traditional classroom bottlenecks and systematically engineered a product to erase every single practical and psychological pain point of the human learner. I'm sure they went through a list, okay, where are the pain points for language learners? Made a list, you know what, we'll do just the opposite. So, is it expensive? Okay, we'll make it cheap. We'll make it free, even better. Is it complex for the learner to learn a language? Well, let's make it mindlessly simple. Is it challenging? Okay, let's shower the user with effortless rewards. Is it a massive commitment? Okay, let's make the lessons 3 minutes long. Is grammar intimidating? Okay, let's strip out the structural rules entirely. Is it boring? Okay, let's turn it into a video game. This is what I believe they likely did. They looked at all the pain points and did the opposite. Now, there's another thing which I believe they did. I don't know this, but I feel that it's a brilliant defense that they set up. So, to defend against the inevitable backlash from true educators, I'm not the only one, true educators, they made their program monumentally vast. By generating millions of disjointed sentences, the spider ate the strawberry, the woman eats the potato, they built a wall of pure volume that's incredibly tedious to dissect. It's very hard to criticize Duolingo. They successfully convinced the public that this infinite volume equaled structured progression, when in reality, you are really just saying random sentences, random isolated sentences. The spider ate the strawberry doesn't lead to anything. There's no hidden logic behind it. Problem number 4 we will call the plastic weight gym. I think the masterstroke of Duolingo is in its exploitation of basic human psychology. I think they're very clever at this. The founders most likely asked a profound question. Will a human being willingly fool themselves into believing they're learning just to feel accomplished? And the answer was a resounding yes. Human beings would absolutely do that. Humans love to rephrase their actions to avoid guilt. We're incredibly happy to apply the high-value verb learning to what is actually just playing with an app on the toilet. And we can make the analogy with a gym. If this was physical fitness, Duolingo would be the equivalent of opening a gym, a commercial gym, stripping out all the heavy iron that gets you strong, and replacing the iron with hollow plastic weights. Users walk in and they lift weightless plastic for 3 minutes, never break a sweat, and leave entirely satisfied with the lie that they just had a grueling workout. And point number 5 we'll call an endless road to nowhere. True learning requires a destination, performance metrics also, and an eventual finishing line where the student functions autonomously. Duolingo is explicitly engineered to have no end point. It doesn't lead anywhere. It's a sort of no-function product that keeps users trapped in a perpetual present moment. It's sort of the linguistic Groundhog Day. It's a road with no termination point. Each day you walk a few steps down the road, down the path, and each night you return home. like a goldfish swimming in circles around the aquarium. And I think that for a massive portion of the market, a lot of buyers actually want this. This lack of progress is actually the secret selling point of Duolingo. I think a lot of people want to feel involved in a language without doing the cognitive heavy lifting. And they tell themselves, well, at least I'm doing something versus nothing. So to conclude, I think that since the 2000s and all these similar businesses to Duolingo, I think we've really seen a tragic cultural regression. We've transitioned from an era where a learner respected the vastness of language acquisition to an era where the public genuinely believes that pushing digital buttons on a screen equals education. I think that Duolingo is one of the most fascinating and also cynical exploitations of human psychological weaknesses that we've seen in recent years. It's a mass market, feel-good corporate illusion. They're not educators. They have no idea how to construct fluency from scratch. And they're not selling a language method, they're simply selling a game. I hope this video was useful. I'm Chris from We Communicate. Find me at wecommunicate.com. Thanks a lot. See you soon.